Before we begin, I just want to say that the series of questions I'll be asking are rather personal in nature, so if at any point in time you're uncomfortable answering anything involving sex education, sexuality, or gender identity, please refrain from answering. How do you identify in terms of gender and sexuality?
I identify in terms of gender, specifically more as a healthy combination of both masculine and feminine. I feel like for our society here in the U.S., I identify more as feminine, and in terms of gender, in comparison to possibly other countries, I think that I might be more masculine. I think that I do have qualities of both, if they were based on the standards of the U.S.
Have you ever felt excluded based on your gender and or sexuality, and if so, in what ways?
Yes, I have. I think because of my tendencies to be more in tune with femininity, I have found that that's been somewhat of an issue when I've wanted to get involved in activities with other males or even with other students. I think my entire life I found that to be somewhat of a challenge.
Have you ever felt pressured to conform to gender stereotypes and or expectations, and which ones, if any?
Yes, actually I have. In certain situations I felt that it was very necessary for me to kind of survive a situation or to get through something by conforming. And by conforming I mean specifically changing the way that I would normally and naturally present myself in order to please other individuals.
When did you first learn about sex?
I first learned about sex when I was in 8th grade and I left private school and was introduced to it by peers in 8th grade.
In terms of what role school played in sex education, would you say that there was very little to no role in that?
Absolutely. I had very little, if not no, education from my educational institution about sex.
There was no mention of anatomy, contraceptives, anything along those lines?
No.
Did your parents ever teach you about sex? And if so, what did he, she, or Z, or they talk to you about?
My parents never engaged in conversation with me about sex.
What is your opinion right now about sex education in schools and what is being taught?
My opinion that I have today has been formed based on my personal experience and the experiences of others that have been shared with me. And I feel very strongly that institutions such as schools should teach sex education because there can be proper standardized procedures. It can be monitored. It can be state regulated, so everybody receives the same type of education, so that they're getting an accurate representation of what they should learn. And I feel like in order to acknowledge and understand that some individuals do not want their children exposed to that, children I mean 18 and younger, they should have the right to opt out of that, to be respectful of those religious customs or those preferences. But I think that someone should be teaching the children, and the someone should be someone who is educated enough. And I feel very strongly that parents are not the most qualified people to educate their children about sex.
Especially if they can't even talk to you about it.
For me personally, my parents couldn't even talk to me about it. And in taking a human sexuality course in school, we were given a survey and assessing our knowledge on sex, and the entire class failed. And the entire class also revealed that their knowledge about sex was based on what their parents had taught them. So as college-age students, still failing basic basic concepts about sex, that's kind of scary to me.
Do you feel that anything is missing from sex education in addition to what you've already touched on?
I think that I don't necessarily know that I could say what I feel is missing. I just feel very strongly that it should be taught in schools by a standardized form that is representative of the field of sex in a healthy manner.
How do you feel about gender identities and sexualities being taught in schools?
I think that that's huge. I think that that's very crucial to the potential development in children in school. If children are only given two options, learned by their social patterns and behaviors around them, then if they don't fit into that specific category, that can have a very detrimental psychological effect. I think it's absolutely crucial that we include and make each individual feel included in our society as a whole, and by that I specifically mean teaching differences in gender and sex.
What would you like to see schools incorporate into sex education?
The main thing that I would like to see schools, public schools in particular, incorporate into sex education is the absolute truth about what's going on. I would like to be confident in sending my kids to school, knowing that they're going to be given facts, not myths or superstition. I would like them to be presented with factual evidence, and I would like them to be also offered a support system of some kind. So perhaps my suggestion to improve sex education would be to end that actual workshop with the offering of some type of support for schools. So whether or not that be the school counselor to talk to or another group, but to then offer students someone to talk to.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.